The supplies that we will be using is an X-Acto knife, medium CA glue, wood glue, a ruler, a pencil, some sandpaper, 5-minute epoxy, masking tape, a popsicle stick, and a Sharpie or marker. The parts that we will need from our kit are the balsa fins, one body tube piece, and the fin marking guide from the instructions. Alright, to start out I'm going to take my instructions and cut out the fin marking guide. I've already made a copy of the instructions onto some copy paper so I can keep the instructions for later. I am using my ruler and X-Acto knife to get an exact cut on the fin marking guide. I'm going to check my cuts to make sure I made it through the paper. Looks like I didn't quite make it all the way through, so I'm going to go back over it with my X-Acto knife. Now that the fin marking guide is free, I will remove it from the paper and set it aside for later. Grabbing one of the body tube pieces and the fin marking guide, I will wrap the fin marking guide around the body tube, being careful to align the two little lines on the guide with the other two lines on the other side. They are looking really good here, so I will take a piece of masking tape to hold it down. I went ahead off camera and took the body tube over to my door frame, just as the instruction says, and made marks on all of the lines. I am now removing the tape from the fin marking guide. You may notice a couple extra pieces. This was to help prevent the fin marking guide from spinning along on the body tube, misaligning the lines in the future. I went ahead and grabbed a pencil with the intention of extending the lines behind the fin marking guide. I wasn't getting a straight line, so I grabbed my ruler to help extend the lines. Now it is time to free our fins from its captive balsa wood holder. Go ahead and grab one of your fins and take your X-Acto knife and cut along the tabs left from the laser cutting process. Make sure you take your time and go all the way around the fin. You can even flip the fin over to cut the tabs from the other side to make sure you cut all the way through. Excellent, your fin is free. Go ahead and do that with the other two fins. Now it is time to prepare our fins. You may notice some residue left over from when I tried to paper my fins. It didn't go well and it dried in wrinkles. I'm going to take some sandpaper, this is 400 grit, to get rid of any high areas. I have finished sanding this fin, but I did notice some dents and scratches that were too deep to be sanded out. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that now. I will be using Elmer's wood filler. This is great as it dries quickly and is easily sanded. I'm just going to get some out on my finger and apply it to the dents and scratches I mentioned earlier. As you can see, this wood filler is very forgiving and it is easy to fill in those dents and scratches. Now that all those areas on the fin are filled in with wood filler, I went ahead and gave a rounded edge to the leading edge of the fin. I'm going to leave the trailing edges of the fin square to make building a little easier. Now it's time to attach the fins to the body tube. What I'm going to do right now is mark the launch lug line so I don't accidentally put a fin there. I'm going to do this with two little L's next to the line. Now I'm going to dry fit a fin next to a line. Not much to see here, just making sure that the line is straight. I'm going to use a technique I found. I'm going to mark the same side of each line with a little X. This is where I will be attaching the fin. I'm not going to attach the fin directly over the line, as that could lead to some misalignments. But if I put the fin on the same side of each line, I can use the line as a guide rather than a placement area. This will help me get the fins nice and straight. Again, I'm checking to make sure that my line is straight before I get to gluing. To help the glue attach to both the body tube and the fin, I'm going to take some sandpaper and rough up the area. But first I need to know how much to sand. So again, I'm going to grab a fin and mark the top of the fin to know how far up the body tube I need to sand. I am going to transfer that line to each of the other fin lines to make sure I don't sand too much. Now I'm going to take some sandpaper, 400 grit in this case, and rough up the side of the line that I'm going to be attaching the fin to. It doesn't take much here, just expose the fibers of the body tube. I'm really being careful here not to sand the line at all. I want as much of the line visible as I can so that I can line it up perfectly. I'm going to go ahead and do all the other lines while I'm here. Now that all the lines are sanded, I'm going to take a rag and clean off any dust. Running my finger over the area I sanded, I can really tell the difference between the smooth side of the paper and the rough side. I'm checking to make sure I sanded the right area all the way up to the top mark I made earlier. Everything is looking good, so now it's time to glue. I grabbed my medium CA and I'm going to put a dot roughly 1 inch to 1.5 inches between each dot along the root of the fin where I will attach it to the body tube. Now that my super glue is done, I'm going to take some wood glue and put it in between the dots of super glue. There's no real reason why I do this, but I find that the super glue dries faster than the wood glue, so I don't have to sit there and hold the fin onto the tube as long. Once all the glue is on, I line it up against the line over the rough paper I made earlier and press it down. I wait a few seconds for the super glue to hold, and then I reach over and grab my super glue accelerator to really speed up the process for the rest of the super glue. Just a couple sprays will help the super glue cure quickly so I can move on to the other fins. Now that this fin is attached, I'm going to take a popsicle stick and smooth out the wood glue that is squeezed out. I do this so that when I apply epoxy later, the wood glue does not get in the way. I also use my finger to clean up any excess glue. This will help when I sand the whole rocket later. I check the alignment to make sure the fin is perpendicular to the body tube. The fin alignment's looking good, so I use a paper towel to clean up any excess glue. I will now follow the process for the two remaining fins. Now that all the fins are attached, I'm going to check the alignment, and everything seems to be looking good so far. Now it is time to add some epoxy fillets. To begin the epoxy fillet process, I'm going to take a clean popsicle stick and a Sharpie. The popsicle stick is about the radius of fillet I want for this rocket. I'm going to uncap my Sharpie and color the end of the popsicle stick. You might look weird doing this, but that's okay. What I'm going to do after I color in this end is run it along the fin and body tube, and the wet Sharpie ink will create a line on the fin and the body tube. This will help when I go to mask a fillet line later. I run over the same area over and over again so the line is visible when I apply the tape. You can kind of see the line here. Once you have a suitable line, go ahead and move to the other side of the fin. Remember, the more ink you put on the popsicle stick, the more that will transfer over to your rocket, and it just makes it easier to apply the tape lines. This part really isn't necessary, but if you struggle to visualize how big your fillet will be, this makes it a lot easier. This side is looking good, so I will go ahead and quickly do the other sides as well. Alright, now that the fillet guides are marked, I'm going to go ahead and grab some masking tape and mask over the lines that I made earlier. Doing this will help make cleanup of the epoxy much easier and provide a nice clean fillet. A mistake that I made here that I hope you can avoid is I decided to tape all the sides up at once. Because I did this, the overhanging tape that you can see did stick together, and it made removing the tape a little bit trickier later down the line. For epoxy, I'm using JB Weld Clear Weld 5-minute epoxy. I don't recommend this for beginners, as you really have to be careful with the amount of each part, part A and part B, that you measure out. I really don't have a guide of how much epoxy to use, but I try to maintain as little as possible so that I don't waste as much. I'm really being careful here to make sure that I pour out equal parts so that they mix and cure properly. You might notice I am using a restaurant-style sauce cup to mix my epoxy. I got these at the local grocery store for a large amount for relatively cheap. I definitely recommend this. I'm taking my time here because uncured epoxy on your rocket is not a good time. Now that my epoxy is mixed, I'm going to grab a glove so that as I pour it onto my rocket, I don't make a mess on my hands. I'm using a popsicle stick to help pour the epoxy over the area of the fillet. Doing so prevents the epoxy from spilling everywhere and making a mess that I would have to clean up later with sandpaper. I'm using the popsicle stick to spread out the epoxy. As I spread out the epoxy, I'm making sure not to remove too much because I really want a strong bond on these fins. Now that this side of the fin is looking good, I'm going to go ahead and quickly do the other side. I'm going over the fillets one more time to make sure they are smooth. The fillets are looking good. I'm going to set my mixing cup aside and keep an eye on it. When it gets to about a tacky stage, I'm going to remove the tape. Now let's take a look at the epoxy. It's been about 5 minutes. Oh yeah, it's starting to get really tacky. Let's take a closer look. As I stir it around, it really does string up. It is time to remove the tape, but like I had mentioned earlier, the tail ends did stick together. This only created a small hassle as I had to remove them carefully. Now that the tape has been freed from its captive partner, I'm able to remove it from the body tube and the fins. You might notice as I'm removing some of the tape, some of the paper from the body tube gets ripped. That's okay, we can fix that later. Well, it looks like more tape got stuck together. I'm going to use my X-Acto blade for a more precise removal of this tape. Now that this tape has also been freed, I'm able to easily remove it from the fins. Alright, all the tape is removed. Let's take a look at these fillets. Taking a closer look, we can admire our very clean fillets. However, we do notice some blemishes on the body tube, but we can take care of that later. And that is the fins. Next up, we will take care of those blemishes on the fuselage.